The role of treachery and betrayal in the Peloponnesian War. Part 1. Shadows of Betrayal. In the Peloponnesian War, battlefields were not the only places where conflicts were fought. In the shadows of city walls and the quiet halls of power, treachery and betrayal shaped the fate of city-states as much as any sword or spear. Both Athens and Sparta, desperate for an advantage, used spies, turncoats, and opportunists to undermine each other, manipulating loyalties and trust. Alliances were fragile and trust was rare. The first seeds of betrayal were planted early in the war, when Athens sought allies across the Aegean Sea to bolster its strength against Sparta. The smaller city-state of Argos, once neutral, was swayed by Athens' promises of protection and resources. However, as the war progressed, Argos found itself caught between the two powers, courted by both Athens and Sparta, each eager to exploit its strategic position. It was here that Athens' first betrayal would come, through one of their own citizens. Cleon, a member of the Athenian council, who had ties with Argive leaders but ambitions that reached further than loyalty to Athens alone. Cleon, known for his ambition, saw an opportunity to profit from both sides. Under the guise of negotiating alliances, he began leaking information to Sparta, a treasonous act that would cost Athens dearly in the years to come. Part 2. The Fall of Amphipolis. Amphipolis, a prosperous Athenian colony in northern Greece, was strategically vital. Controlling it meant controlling the trade routes and resources of the north. When the Spartan general Brasidas approached Amphipolis, he knew he couldn't defeat the city through force alone. Instead, he relied on the power of betrayal. Brasidas made contact with a discontented faction within Amphipolis, offering them security and wealth if they turned against Athens. The faction, unhappy with the Athenian oversight and heavy taxes, agreed. Under the cover of night, they opened the gates to the Spartan forces, allowing Brasidas to capture the city with minimal bloodshed. News of Amphipolis's fall reached Athens swiftly, spreading panic and fear. The betrayal hit them hard, especially for Thucydides, an Athenian general who had been assigned to protect the city but had arrived too late to stop the betrayal. He was exiled for his failure, and the loss of Amphipolis haunted Athens throughout the war. This marked a turning point, as Athens became increasingly paranoid about loyalty within its own ranks. Trust eroded, and the Athenians began to see betrayal lurking in every corner. Part 3. Alcibiades, a master of treachery. Alcibiades, one of the most famous figures in the Peloponnesian War, was both a hero and a villain, a master of manipulation who used betrayal to his advantage. A charismatic Athenian general with a powerful lineage, he was known for his sharp mind, charm, and ambition, but his loyalties were fluid, always shifting in the direction of personal gain. Initially, Alcibiades supported Athens, advocating for the Sicilian expedition, a campaign he believed would expand Athenian influence. However, just as the expedition was underway, he was accused of sacrilege and forced into exile. Rather than accepting defeat, Alcibiades defected to Sparta, bringing with him valuable information about Athens' plans and weaknesses. In Sparta, Alcibiades won favor with his insights, advising them on how to counteract Athenian strategies. His betrayal was devastating to Athens, as his knowledge gave Sparta a significant advantage in the war. But even in Sparta, Alcibiades remained restless, eventually falling out of favor due to his charm and rumored affairs, which alienated him from Spartan leaders. He fled once again, this time seeking refuge with Persia, where he used his cunning to play both Athens and Sparta against each other for his benefit. Alcibiades' shifting loyalties highlighted the dangers of treachery in war. He moved like a shadow, revealing the fragility of alliances based on trust and the devastating impact a single person could have on the course of history. Part 4. The Collapse of Trust. As the war continued, both Athens and Sparta grew increasingly suspicious of their own allies and citizens. Paranoia and fear spread, leading to internal purges. Athens, particularly affected by betrayal, began accusing citizens of colluding with the enemy, and trials for treason became common. The slightest association with a foreign state or critical word against Athens was enough to arouse suspicion. The assembly turned inward, consumed by distrust. In this climate of paranoia, even longtime allies could no longer be counted on. Corcyra, once firmly aligned with Athens, began secret negotiations with Sparta, seeking peace for their own benefit. Likewise, allies of Sparta, exhausted by the constant fighting and wary of Spartan ambitions, began to look toward Athens, hoping to broker deals to save their own cities. One example of this distrust was the case of Nicias, an Athenian general known for his cautious approach and diplomatic skills. Nicias had successfully negotiated a temporary peace treaty with Sparta, but as suspicions mounted, he found himself increasingly isolated. Rumors spread that he was colluding with the Spartans, and despite his years of loyal service, he became a target of suspicion. In Sparta, distrust also ran deep. Allies who had once pledged loyalty began to consider alternatives, seeing that the Spartan way, though effective in battle, offered little in terms of security or stability. Spartan leaders who had relied on force to maintain loyalty now faced unrest from within. The system of strict loyalty and honor had been weakened, slowly undermined by the betrayals and shifting alliances brought on by the war. Part 5. The war's bitter end. By the end of the Peloponnesian War, both Athens and Sparta were weary and broken, each side decimated by years of fighting and the countless betrayals that had eroded trust and unity. When Athens finally surrendered, it was not solely due to Spartan military might, but also because of the internal divisions, paranoia, and betrayals that had hollowed it from within. The lessons of betrayal lingered in the minds of the survivors. Athens, once a proud democracy, had been brought low not just by the sword but by the distrust that had spread like a disease through its people. Sparta, though victorious, found itself ruling over a land filled with resentful allies and fragile alliances. The very strategies of deceit that had won them the war would, in the end, make it difficult to maintain peace. As the dust settled, both city-states realized that the betrayals and treachery that had defined the Peloponnesian War had left them vulnerable. They had sacrificed the bonds of trust for fleeting advantages, only to find that true power lay not in deception, but in unity, a lesson learned too late. Part 6. Reflections in the Aftermath. As the Peloponnesian War came to an end, Greece was left in a state of fragmentation, with former allies turned enemies and old loyalties destroyed. The war, which had once been seen as a fight for dominance and power, was now remembered as a lesson in the dangers of betrayal and the price of distrust. Both Athens and Sparta were left weakened, their societies fractured by the very tactics they had once believed would secure their future. In Athens, survivors looked back on the war with a mixture of sorrow and regret. Alcibiades had returned to the city in its final days, trying once again to position himself as a leader, but the damage had already been done. His betrayal had left a permanent scar, and his legacy became a symbol of the perils of unchecked ambition. Many Athenians whispered his name with bitterness, seeing in him a reflection of all that had gone wrong, the personal ambitions and internal divisions that had torn their city apart. For Sparta, the war's end left them as victors, but it was a hollow victory. The alliances they had relied upon began to crumble as former allies, tired of Spartan rule and its strict demands, looked to distance themselves. Even within Sparta, the toll of endless warfare was evident. The rigid honor code and militaristic discipline that had once unified them now felt burdensome in a world that had changed. The phalanx, their renowned military formation, was no longer enough to hold together a society built on fear and suppression. Part 7. A new era of uncertainty. In the years following the war, the effects of betrayal continued to ripple across the Greek world. City-states that had once respected Athens for its cultural achievements and Sparta for its military strength began to view both with distrust. Other powers, such as Thebes and Corinth, rose to challenge the weakened city-states, and even smaller cities saw opportunities to claim independence. The war had not only weakened Athens and Sparta but had also destabilized all of Greece, creating a political landscape marked by uncertainty and shifting allegiances. For Lysandros, a Spartan soldier who had fought in countless battles, the peace brought little relief. He, like many Spartans, had lost friends and family to the long years of fighting. Now he returned to a city he barely recognized, A place where the rigid honor he had once valued felt hollow. Standing on the ruins of a war-torn Sparta, Lysandros saw that the price of betrayal was not just paid in lost battles, but in the erosion of trust, community, and hope. In Athens, those who had survived the war began to question the ideals they had once fought to protect. The paranoia that had infiltrated the assembly lingered even after the war's end, leaving Athenians wary of one another, always questioning where loyalties lay. Democracy, once a symbol of Athenian strength, had been twisted by fear and